Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bring you our 2013 preseason FBS All-American team. Now, there's many great players across the land that are worthy of being on this list. So let's start by naming our first team All-American, starting with the quarterback position. The reigning Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Manziel definitely deserves a spot on this list. Last year rushed for over 1,400 yards, had 47 total touchdowns, and you can expect him to build on what he did last season, so I don't see a drop-off for Johnny football.
Todd Gurley out of Georgia, 6'1", 233 pounds, runs with a lot of power and has great acceleration. And he put together an impressive freshman campaign out there in Athens, even though he splits time with another sensational running back, Keith Marshall.
DeAnthony Thomas, a.k.a. the Black Mamba, can score from anywhere on the football field. In only 2 short years out there in Eugene, he's accumulated over 3,700 yards of total offense and 36 touchdowns. This guy can score from anywhere on the field. Of course, I have a fullback on my preseason All-American team. You look at Trey Millard out of Oklahoma, a do-it-all type of fullback. He's a devastating blocker, can catch the football out of the backfield, but I think he's a very underrated and underused running back at 6'2", 259. Give me a guy like Millard on my team each and every day of the week.
Marquise Lee out of USC is a big play threat waiting to happen, and whomever is going to be back there at quarterback for the Trojans would definitely have a deep threat to throw the football to. Now that he doesn't have Robert Woods on the opposite side of him, look for Marquise Lee to put up some huge numbers this season.
I'm a big fan of Jordan Matthews out of Vanderbilt. This is a guy that has gotten better each and every year. And when you look back at his 2012 campaign, 94 receptions and over 1,300 yards in the SEC, that's getting it done. Austin Safarian Jenkins was a highly touted recruit coming into the University of Washington, and when you look at his 2 seasons as a Husky, 109 receptions, and is a huge threat in the red zone.
This is an impressive list of offensive linemen that even I can get out there and rush for 1,000 yards behind. You look at Taylor Lewin out of Michigan, next in the long line of great Wolverine tackles. Trey Jackson out of Florida State is a guy that can do it both from the guard position, can pass protect very well, and also is an outstanding run blocker. And when you look at Tyler Larson out of Utah State, very underrated program. They're building something special out there in Salt Lake City. He's one of the best centers in the country, 6'3", 315-pound senior. And when you look at Cyril Richardson out of Baylor, Baylor has quietly produced some very good offensive linemen in recent years, and Richardson is next in line, 6'5", 335 pounds, and Jake Matthews could have been a first-round selection last year in the NFL draft. Now he moves from right tackle to left tackle to protect the blind side of Johnny football.
I had to find a spot for the sensational sophomore T.J. Yeldon. You look at last year as a true freshman in the SEC, rushed for over 1,100 yards, 6.5 yards a carry, and 12 touchdowns. That, my friend, is what you call a freshman of influence.
When you talk about dominating defensive linemen, you're talking about Jadeveon Clowney out of South Carolina. I'm both excited and interested to see what else he can do to improve on an already impressive resume.
You want to talk about a disruptive force, you talk about Scott Crichton out of Oregon State. This guy had 32 TFLs, and that tells you all you need to know about what he's capable of doing on a defensive line.
Big Louis Nix out of Notre Dame is a dominating presence on the interior of that defensive line. It's the real reason why Notre Dame's 3-4 defense was one of the top defenses in the country. And Will Sutton, a quick defensive tackle, big fan of his game. This guy, I believe, this year will put it all together, which has already been an impressive career out there in the desert.
C.J. Mosley is always around the football. Last year, he was an All-American, over 100 tackles. He can play inside, he can play outside, and he definitely has a spot on this team because of his versatility and his playmaking ability.
And speaking of linebackers that's always around the football, you're talking about Kyle Van Noy out of BYU. This guy provides some intriguing options, not only as an outside rusher, but also dropping back into coverage. And when you look at Anthony Barr out of UCLA, the move to the 3-4 defense has boosted his draft stock, but also has enhanced his athletic ability. This is a guy that can drop back in coverage, but also lives in the backfield.
There's a lot to like about Bradley Roby, cornerback out of Ohio State. This guy has solid all-around skills. What makes him most impressive to me is the fact that his instincts are where they need to be for the cornerback position. He is always around the football.
Justin Gilbert out of Oklahoma State could have actually made our All-American team as both a kickoff returner and a punt returner, but I'm a big fan of his play at cornerback. In 2011, he had 5 interceptions, and last season, quarterbacks must have learned their lesson because they avoided throwing to his side. Craig Lawson seems to be next in a long line of solid LSU safety prospects. This guy has supreme awareness and ball skills and is a threat to score once he gets his hands on a football. And Hassan Clinton-Dix, a.k.a. HaHa Clinton-Dix, out of Alabama, 6'1", 208 pounds. Very good all-around game. Another in the long line of solid safety prospects coming out of that Nick Saban program.
Cairo Santos out of Tulane was last year's Lou Groza Award winner, which is given to the nation's top kicker. He went 21 for 21 on his field goal attempts, so that's 100%. You don't miss, you definitely get a spot as a first-team All-American on Football Game Plan's list.
Kirby Vanderkamp out of Iowa State is an excellent punter. You look at a guy that averaged over 42.5 yards a punt, and 29 of his punts landed inside the 20-yard line. Bernard Reedy actually could have made our list as a wide receiver, had over 1,100 yards for the Toledo Rockets, but last year, this guy brought back 3 kickoffs for touchdowns. Dre Archer out of Kent State is one of the more exciting players to watch in college football. I had to find a way to put him on this list, and luckily he made the All-American team as a punt returner. That's too many touchdowns, too many explosive plays, too many ankles broken to leave off this list. This guy reminds me a lot of Eric Metcalf. He has that type of ability, and it's his broken field running that keeps crowds and also defenders on the edge of their seats. Now let's take a look at the second team offense. A lot of great players still on this list. Braxton Miller, the quarterback out of Ohio State, expected to take the next step and may have a Heisman Trophy type of season similar to what Johnny Manziel had last year. And also look at Arthur Lynch out of Georgia, underrated tight end prospect, but definitely is a guy that can own the middle of the field. And Trey Watts out of Tulsa, explosive playmaker. If you like Dre Archer, if you like Bernard Reedy, you'll like Trey Watts out of Tulsa. Keep an eye on him. And on our second team defense, there's a lot of guys on this list that's going to be breakout stars this season. Anthony Johnson out of LSU, impressive defensive tackle prospect. I look at Andrew Jackson out of Western Kentucky. This guy is always on impactful plays for that Hilltopper defense. And in the secondary, Isaiah Newsom, former running back, moved over to safety and has been impressive since he's made that switch out of UL Monroe.